Pronto, pronto, pronto? Prova? Sì, ok, ok, perfetto. Sì? Oh, guarda, mi puoi dare... Uno lascialo a me. I feel myself X generation.
Allora, sì. Non sto riuscendo a farlo andare.
No, puoi lasciarlo aperto, tanto stiamo per iniziare. Sì, 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 anzi.
Allora, anzi, facciamo così si vedono.
Dobbiamo... Non... Sì, grazie. Ah, ok. Vabbè, tanto possiamo iniziare. Dai. Ok. Vale. Mi date un chiamo fuori che iniziamo? Aspetta. Okay, so I guess we can start little by little. I would like to give you the welcome to this first event of, in intense Ocean Data Week. So we are going to discuss about ocean data management, ocean processes. And the first day, this morning, we're starting with the Nautilus policy brief. Nautilus is an amazing project that is really developing the full ocean data value. So we're starting from the designing of new observations. We are discussing about which are the needs, which are the kind of sensors that we're still missing. We are developing the sensors. We are deploying the sensor and testing the sensor in order to have a better accuracy and then better resolution, robustness of the data. We are putting this data into services in order to improve the quality of the services in order to answer also to marine directive requirements. And so I'm really happy to have here Mr. Ketsus Saudauskas, that is the Deputy Director General of DG Mare, and he's going to open our session presenting also the point of view of the Commission, because we are working for the Commission in order to support Commission policies. So, Mr. Ketsutis, please come in. And there you are. Okay, this one. Yeah, sorry.
Good morning. I've come here with a couple of hats. One of them is indeed what was a bureaucrat from European Commission at the senior management in the maritime affairs. The other function that I carry is the manager of the mission called Restore Our Ocean and Waters by 2030. And I just came back from the Ocean Race Summit, where we still haven't got all the boats coming in there because the Mother Nature is playing tricks with us. As you could see, even though we've got the first winner who came in here just yesterday, but all these things, for me, they link up into one, and that is how we protect the ocean, how we do it in a smart way, and doing it in a smart way requires knowledge. Knowledge requires observation, data collection, and all the things that you as professionals are doing here. And that's also part of our story as well, because as a policymaker, we have the duty to build all our policies and make all our decisions on the best available knowledge. And it turns out that the knowledge about the ocean, in spite of the fact that we've been collecting it for centuries already, is still not sufficient. And sometimes when we make the decisions, we do make mistakes, precisely because we don't know so much about it, or the ocean variables are so many, and the unknowns are so many, that all of a sudden it turns out that we are still in the blind for many things. But things are changing because all parts of the world are stepping in. There is an immense amount of the actors who are doing ocean observation, who are creating the devices, creating all the equipment for that. Also seeing how you can valorize the data. The amounts of it is increasing exponentially. We're talking really about the terabytes of information. The question also now is how you make sense out of it. But at the same time, we see that there is still quite a huge fragmentation all over the place. Because there are so many overlaps. Universities, companies, the institutes, they're doing sometimes very similar things. And sometimes they don't do the things that we need them to do. On top of that, we have the citizen science coming in. And I think the ocean race is exactly one of the case in point, because everybody who I talk to here, they're absolutely willing to step in the data collection and ocean observation as let's say, a mission for themselves. So it's not only about the race only, but it's also about bringing back the knowledge and a sense of the urgency about what we need to do about the oceans in terms of protection, pollution, develop them new kinds of the blue economy. And again, this is what the ocean mission is really about. But again, beyond that, it's the knowledge, it's the wisdom, and only with that you can make the right kind of decision. This is where the ocean observation come in. This is where the Nautilus project is also contributing very valuably by making sure that you are deploying the right kind of devices in the right kind of places for the right kind of purposes. And we really are in favor of your objectives. We are supporting you, and we want good results to come out. On our side, we're working on a number of the projects. I mentioned again the Ocean Mission. Within the Ocean Mission, there is a huge mega project which we call Digital Twin Ocean. It's an unprecedented project where we want to replicate what we have about the ocean in a virtual world. And that's also for the decision making, because instead of trying to experiment and make the mistakes to our own peril out there, maybe we can do that in silica on the screen first, knowing all the data and using all the data that we have now. But for that, we have to really replicate what we have out there on the screen. And this is what the Digital Twin Ocean is about. And if everything goes right, with the help of, from your side, with the help of many other stakeholders, we may have certain core infrastructure with a possibility to demonstrate how the Digital Twin Ocean can work in practice by the end of next year. This is just like the ocean race. It's the race against the time, but we are confident and we're very determined to be there. We also have with us, the absolute, I would say, the flagship and the jewel of all the ocean research, which is EMODnet. On which we have been working for a long time, and I would say now is really the place to go and the source to go if you really want to get your best data about the ocean. Again, it's a project that is still building up, and it has a huge potential, and by the way, huge expectation as well. And EMODnet, together with a few other sort of the tools, will be the key part of the digital twin ocean, which in turn will be the key for the success of the ocean mission. Another project where the Commission is also working really hard is the ocean observation, because what we have discovered is that there is, again, a lot of activity that is ongoing, but there are overlaps, there are gaps. There is a lot of inefficiencies. There is a lot of data that is being measured so many times and still never used or gets lost somewhere, somehow in our systems. And we felt that it's really time to bring the efficiency and streamline all these processes so that we can get the best value for the money. So it's the efficiency and effectiveness at the same time. We'll see how we progress with this project. The rationale and the case for that is very, very strong, and I believe that it will help at least to put some order into what happens here in Europe, especially because it's growing exponentially. But we need to also convince our politicians that this is worth doing it, because it's not always evident that data collection about the oceans, requires a piece of European law. And in this case, I personally believe it does, but it will take time for the politicians to be convinced, not only in the Commission, but also, by the way, in the European Parliament, who is going into the elections. And as you know, when democracy flourishes, election time can be very treacherous, just like the stormy waters sometimes out in the ocean. So we have big ambitions, we have big projects. We know the reality is very demanding. We are trying to stand up to that responsibility, and the only way to succeed for us is that if we again do it together, if we rely on you as a stakeholders, rely on your support, on your knowledge, on your precious pushes, contributions, ideas, and the solutions. If we do it, I'm sure we will succeed, and the projects like Nautilus is one of the key ingredients of the success, which I'm very, very confident will come to us. So with this, I'll unfortunately have to leave and won't be able to listen to you, but I believe that some of the proceedings here would be recorded, or there would be probably some summaries in the end. So I'll be really looking forward to know the impact, the result, the outcome of it, as well as any recommendation against ourselves for where we can do more and better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, you mentioned already some of the key points for Nautilus as well, because it's really in line with all the expectation that you were presenting, because it's already connected to EMODnet, so we are trying to feed and consume some of the data. We are really looking forward for the digital twins, because we also have some tools that we are going to discuss today in order to improve the quality of data, the quality of observation, planning better observation. So we are going to discuss about this. So I'm really thankful for your introduction, and I wish you a safe trip back. And thank you again. But Nautilus is also innovation. So I would like to welcome the introduction from our officer from DG. So, Nikolai, thank you very much for connecting, and I pass the word to you.
Thank you, Antonio. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me and DG Research and Innovation the opportunity to say a few opening words after Kęstutis Sadowskas. I wish I was present with you today, of course, but the European Commission is cutting on its greenhouse gas emissions, so we limit travels as much as possible. So I'm sorry, but I have to join you only virtually. You heard from Kęstutis Sadowskas about the mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters. And I would like to come back to that and say a few more words. So I'm just trying to share my screen now. Do you see it well?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. So EU missions are a new way to bring concrete solutions to some of the greatest challenges of our time. We have 5 missions. They have ambitious goals, and they will deliver concrete results by 2030. The EU missions are anchored in research innovation, but they really aim at giving it directions beyond the EU research programs. So that is, they want to include efforts from other EU programs, the structural funds, the maritime and fisheries funds, all the EU programs, but also and certainly the national and regional programs. The mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters has 3 main objectives. First, to protect and restore marine and freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity. Second, to prevent and eliminate pollution of our oceans, seas, and waters. And third, to make the blue economy carbon neutral and circular. Each of these objectives come with very clear and measurable targets. In addition to the three objectives, the mission has identified two key cross-cutting enablers: public mobilization and engagement, and the digital ocean and water knowledge system. Mobilization and engagement are, of course, paramount to the success of this mission. It is clear that if we do not mobilize a wide range of actors, we will not be able to meet our ambitious targets. So on these specific points, I would like to call on all of you to consider endorsing the mission charter, if it's not done yet. The charter is our tool to mobilize stakeholders and to foster cooperation. It also gives the signatories with a number of benefits, which you can read on the slide. Essentially, it's opportunities for networking, sharing best practices. It gives you visibility. There will be a number of services that will be provided by the mission implementation platform. And there will be also a number of support from the lighthouses, coordination and support actions. The charter can be endorsed at the individual, institutional, or project level. So please have a look at it. It's very simple to find it through Google. You Google Mission Restore Ocean and Waters. Have a look at the charter, what it takes to endorse it. It's very easy, and please do so. The second enabler, which was mentioned by Kęstutis, is a digital ocean and water knowledge system, of which the EU digital twin of the ocean is a main deliverable. The idea of the EU DTO, as we call it, came from the realization that despite of over 2 decades of investments to develop very strong marine observation and forecasting assets, and we heard one of them already, EMODNet, we also have Copernicus, we have the research project and the infrastructure project. They are all recognized worldwide, but the current situation still has a number of limitations. For instance, the sources of knowledge are still too siloed and too fragmented. They are not quite fit for the digital age and for the use of these very powerful technologies that are artificial intelligence, machine learning, high performance computing, cloud computing, you name it. And most importantly, the knowledge and the information does not easily reach the ocean actors in an actionable form. An actionable form is really the key word here. And that is what the EU DTO is all about. Its purpose is to support a science-based approach to policy implementation. For instance, in climate adaptation strategies, in maritime spatial planning, or in policies to restore biodiversity. Its purpose is also to support the development of sustainable business model and really sustainable business models for the companies that are operating at seas, aquaculture, fisheries, renewable, etc. And third, it is about engaging with society more broadly and more efficiently. So what we are currently building is a digital core infrastructure, which is conceived as a public good and service, which aim is to integrate the EU assets that I just mentioned with digital technologies. And its purpose is to facilitate the development of specific applications, call it local digital twins, in all ocean domains. These applications will incorporate what-if scenarios and innovative visualization tools for the direct use by ocean actors, policymakers, local authorities, businesses, citizens. The EU DTO, and I insist on that, is an integration effort that would be completely void if not supported by a sound and solid science base. That is, an observation system which is fit for purpose, a wealth of accessible ocean observation, and robust modeling. The need for a comprehensive thinking for ocean knowledge is at the center of the reflections in the G7 Futures of the Seas and Ocean initiative, which covers the entire knowledge value chain, the observation technologies, the observation system, the sharing of fair data, interoperable data infrastructures, forecasting, and last but not least, the citizen science policy interface precisely to ensure that knowledge reaches the right people in the right form. And it is, by the way, under this framework, the G7 Future of the Seas and Ocean Initiative, that the Nautilus project has been funded, together with other projects such as the EuroSea project, which has a session tomorrow and which I hope you will be able to attend. But that is not all, of course. Under the mission Ocean, we have analyzed all EU programs beyond Horizon and identified over 180 different actions worth more than €1 billion that are directly relevant to the digital ocean knowledge system. And we have categorized them along their type and fields of activities, as you can see in the slide. The report of this study is publicly available, together with a very useful dashboard, which allows anyone to quickly screen all these projects and identify projects that may offer potential for synergies and cooperation. These two, like the mission charter, can be found on the Mission Ocean webpage. So just Google it, play with the dashboard, and find the project you may cooperate with. Now, back to the matter of this policy roundtable and to Nautilus. Ocean data is cruelly lacking, especially when it comes to the biological side of it. Ocean observations are typically very expensive, and long-term series typically not sustained. This is why it is so important to develop the technologies of tomorrow's, what Nautilus is doing. Technologies that must be cost-efficient, robust, validated, and able to provide fair, standardized, and as real-time as desirable data. But it is not enough to work just on the technological developments. We must also ensure that these are eventually deployed at large scale and used for the daily monitoring of our ocean. This is also why we must support the development of a European market of ocean sensors and instrumentation. It is also key to ensure strong engagement with all stakeholders, the citizens in particular. We heard it from Kęstutis again, as it is them that our policies and action eventually serve. The European Commission is committed to all of this, and the Ocean Observation Initiative is one of the answers we propose, together with initiatives such as InvestEU Blue Economy. We also hope that the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership, the recently launched co-fund partnership, which Italy is leading, between the member states and the European Union, will be able to play an important role in this respect in the near future. So that's it. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you excellent discussions today.
Thank you, Nikolai. Thank you very much. Can you get back to the connection, please? Just to show him once again. And thank you very much for your, nice introduction. And as you said, you touched some of the key points that we are going to discuss today. So, I forget to say that, this event organized by Nautilus was also endorsed by the United Nations Decade of Science. So it's really in line with everything you're saying, because we're really covering, as I said before, the full, that ocean data value chain, because we're starting from the collection, but we also take care about literacy and citizen science activities. And we are going to discuss about this today. So I thank you very much for your introduction. It's very welcome. We hope to, fulfill some of the expectation that we are posing on the Nautilus project. We are doing our best, and you're going to see during the day, the progress that we have done. But as you said, it's also important having open dialogue with other initiatives to be connected, because we are not islands, especially in the sea. And so it's quite important to have this. So this is also an opportunity to welcome the first panel. So I would like to introduce, this first panel. Thank you once again. Yes, thank you. And we're going to discuss about the importance of ocean observation in climate change. That is one of the topics that we are facing. So I would like to welcome on the stage Gabriele Pieri, that is the coordinator of Nautilus, Antonio Parodi, just in time, Antonio, from CIMA Foundation, and Andrew Meyers, that is coordinator of the Ocean Eyes, but he is from the British Antarctic Scientific Institute, and so we can discuss all together about some of the problems that related to climate change. So I don't know if you want to stand and talk, or if you want to just sit and talk. You're going to have your presentation in front of you. When you see that I'm moving, it's almost time to get to the conclusion. So, so I would like to start with Gabriele. Yes, you need to, it's arrow down. Yeah. So, Gabriele.
Thank you. I will just sit like here. Thank you, and yeah, I think that first of all, I want to thank Antonio and all previous speakers. I think most of the keywords that have been repeatedly pronounced till now are completely covering all Nautilus activities. So what I want to show is just a comprehensive frame of the Nautilus project. Then in other session later on, you will see some more detailed about the specific activities that we are dealing with. So, Nautilus project. Nautilus project is aiming to develop new technologies for the ocean observation. Where we start first analyzing the gaps in current ocean observation. After this analysis, we followed up with definition of the requirements and the needed phase for integration and calibration and validation. But before, there was a development phase of the 13, 14 already technologies that we are dealing with in our project. And those technologies, varying very, very much, will aim to cover around 70% of the essential ocean variables and 8 descriptors from the Marine Strategy Framework directives. As you can see from these infographics, besides the integration into different, very different platforms, as you can see, we have floating sensor, buoys, animal taggings. I will show something later. There is another underlying concept, which is also part of the concepts that has been said before. So there is data management, but there is as well citizen science, which is very, very important in our project. Some of the sensors that we are developing will be distributed among citizen science initiatives to be tested, to be calibrated, and to be used for what we call democratization of the ocean observation. Along with data management and data modeling that are underlying all the data that we are collecting, it is quite important to recall that all the data that we are collecting will be shared and are already being shared through existing archiving initiatives like EMODNet, Copernicus, and others. Besides that, we also are dealing with European strategy for plastics in a circular economy, which was mandatory in our call. And the impact we aim to achieve with our project is obviously to have an enhanced observation for European oceans, to get healthier oceans, but also with a lot of companies that are in our projects, to have an enhanced and generated economic value for the blue economy. So, coming to the technologies, here in the center column you see the technologies that we are developing. I will show some of them afterwards, from the solid oxygen sensor, carbonate, suspended matter, microplastic, microplastic sensor sampler, and other acoustic, passive and active sensor, a lot of sensor. On the left side, you see a kind of picture of what these technologies that we are developing aim to cover in terms of essential ocean variables, the 70% that I was mentioning before, while on the right side, the same 8 descriptors that are dealing with our technologies. Here is just a frame of the technologies, the cost-effective technologies that we are developing. Well, most of them are already developed and are under the phase of calibration, validation, as well as the integration into the proper platform. As you can see from those pictures, some of them are just integrated into some platforms, some of them are standalone technologies that can be used by other type of platforms. What is important and it will be shown also in the next slide, it's that what we want to achieve an interoperability of technologies and platforms so that the technologies will be able to be used among different platforms. Among the different platforms here you can see you have underwater vehicle, autonomous vehicle, we have animal tagging, we have surface vehicle, we have autonomous the drones, we have buoys, we'll have cargo floats, a lot of platforms, and with some of them we'll try to make interoperability, moving some of the developed sensor in one stage and then in another one. Our technologies will be integrated and will be tested in various environments, from the Mediterranean Sea to the North Sea, the ocean, and even the Atlantic Ocean in the Azores, and even the Atlantic Ocean in the south part, as we have these lovely animal elephant seals, which will be taking our sensor in the Valdez Peninsula in Argentina. As we mentioned before, we are collecting a lot of data. All these data obviously need to be validated, calibrated, and then obviously when shared, we need to have a backend that will be able to pour all these data through the existing archiving center, as we mentioned here, and here just showing the architecture that we developed in our project with the web portal, but what is most important is the path from the data to the existing data archiving, so that all the researcher and oceanographer can take advantage of this new amount of data. Part of this is also data processing and data modeling, underlying all these. So we have, besides collecting data, we also have a part for analyzing those data in terms of various types of signals, various types of images collected. And here is just a brief picture of some of the analysis that we are dealing with in our project, and whose data will be an added value to the existing chain value of data in eModNet and other centers. Here you see just, yeah. As an Horizon 2020 project, obviously we have also another mission, quite very important: dissemination, awareness raising, and knowledge transfer, also considering that we are involving several companies in our project and several universities and research center. For instance, we already organized the first Nautilus Summer School, which will be happening in Norway next autumn. And the second summer school year is already under planning for the 2024, but we already have a lot of initiatives like training in schools with school kids and plastic collection campaigns. And many of these are part of this, let's say, social exploitation, because what we want to achieve, and that was also mentioned before, was quality assurance. So one of the processes during our data collection and calibration is to achieve, following the existing standards, but to achieve a quality control and quality assurance that possibly could bring end to an innovative best practice or novel best practice that hopefully could be received by the policymakers and could be used and to have an impact in subsequent programs and projects. Obviously, also the exploitation side with the companies developing technologies is also a very, very important aspect that we are not diminishing. Final, but very, very prominent aspect of our project as well, again, as a keyword, it was previously mentioned, citizen science. It was kind of, at least for me, but I think for everybody, kind of unexpected success of our citizen science activities in these first 2 years of the project. Even during COVID period, we could perform really, really many of different citizen science activities. Here you can see just working. No. But you can see in the center part, citizen science hub that we developed, capable of collecting, and obviously not just collecting, but sharing through the Nautilus data management infrastructure, the data that is collected towards the external aggregators, and other plastic collection campaigns on beaches, tool developed for algae monitoring to be used by normal citizens through a smartphone, and near-infrared tool that was used coupled with a smartphone that some experience has been carried out in Norway and in Belgium with school as well. So all of this is obviously linked also, as I mentioned before, with the European strategy for plastic in a circular economy. And all of this goes well, fit well with what was required by the Commission, with our call, but with our expectation in the program. And I think that's all. I hope I've been on time.
Thank you very much. No, you were very quick in time. And you mentioned many activities and an amazing project. I know I'm involved in. But one key point, as we are dealing with different data sources that are coming from very high, super sophisticated scientific instruments, as well as from applications that are given to scientists. How can we make sure that all this data that we collect about the ocean is accurate and of enough quality to be used?
Yeah, that's a very important point, because quality of data and the assurance of these data are capable of improving and giving an added value is quite important, and that's in fact why we have a specific work package in our project dealing with the calibration and validation that goes together along with the integration. So the calibration and validation of the technologies that we develop are being carried on in a specific work package, so that the data that we'll be collecting during the final phase, the demonstration on the field, will be validated and will be giving a quality value to the chain of data collected.
Good, very good. So it means that in order to provide the decision makers, they can rely on specific packages that also the project is going to make available. And so how can we use this information to make decisions, for example, about climate change or the effects that we are monitoring at sea, in order to support also the policy and management making process? Decision-making process.
Yeah, we think that the main goal will be to be able to share all the data we'll be collecting, all the fair data in a comprehensive manner, so that they will be usable by the widest audience of researcher or oceanographer that can be able to increase the amount of researches and the studies over these data that we have been collected. And all together, we are also aiming through our policy making work to increase and to improve the pressure on policymakers, trying to increase, as well as I mentioned, possibly trying to drive some new best practice for some of the ocean observation in our project.
Okay, thank you. So, very good. Thank you again for your presentation, and I also taking the link about the fact that the ocean is not isolated. We need to discuss and interact also with the atmosphere, and the value of the citizens also in collecting the data from the atmosphere is quite important in order to be a big community and make pressure and offer this data towards our policymakers. So I would like to invite Antonio to step on the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for the invitation, for this opportunity. As Antonio said, I am coming a little bit from the other side of the apple, in the sense that I am not an oceanographer. I am a meteorologist. I am working in the civil protection sector with CIMA Research Foundation, which is a research foundation of the Italian Civil Protection Department. And despite the fact that we are not directly producers, neither collectors of ocean data, we are getting more and more interested in ocean observations for our research and operational applications. One of the things that I wanted to introduce in my speech is probably one of the biggest challenges we are facing, and we will face more and more in forthcoming years and decades in terms of high-impact weather events in the Mediterranean environment. One of the most impacting and impressive events that we may face along the northern and southern coastline of the Mediterranean are the so-called mesoscale convective systems. For people not directly dealing with extreme atmospheric events, maybe this kind of naming is not so relevant, but in a nutshell, it is telling us that it is all about an event very localized in space and time, usually lasting a few hours or maximum 12 hours, and capable to pour down at the ground along very urbanized coastline a very significant portion of the annual rainfall depth amount. Those maps are showing a few examples of events that took place now 10 years ago along the Italian and the French coastlines, and they look like basically very localized events. You see there the brightness temperature, and those events, as I said, are capable to generate locally over the sea or even more over the hillside of the Mediterranean coastline, something like half of the annual rainfall depth. Liguria region, where we are located, Genoa in particular, is one of the areas in the Mediterranean where those events are more common. If we go back, and Antonio may certainly remember, in 2010 we had one of those events in Sestre Ponente, in 2011 in Cinque Terre, not far from here. Again in 2011, the 4th of November, Bisagno Creek, which is somewhere down the street, hidden but still very dangerous, those events were capable to generate in 6 hours something like 500-600 millimeters of rainfall, which is more than half of the annual rainfall depth. So what we are interested in our research activities and in our operational activity is try to predict better those events. Those are the images related to the Liguria events. You see that you may have regions where you peak rainfall depth above 400 millimeters and the rest is 10-20 millimeters, so nothing. A lot of lightning activities associated, and those events all together are capable really to put in crisis our urban areas, to produce deadly flash flood, killing, as it happened in 2011 in Cinque Terre, 12 people, or in Genova 6 people. So what we are trying to do, and this is where probably also the Nautilus data can be of interest, we are trying to get a better capability of predicting those events, because we are expecting that the frequency of those events in the future climate, at least as an example in Liguria region, is expected to increase by 20%. So those events will become more common, especially in September, October, and November, and more intense. So what we started to do in the last few years was to understand if by using an hydrometeorological forecasting chain, going to observation of the atmosphere and observation of the ocean, we can, at the end of the day, passing through meteo models, through hydrological models, so transferring water from the hills to the creeks, to hydraulic models, to offer to the civil protection better forecast. At the end of the day, to save life and goods, to protect goods. And we were learning that, for example, by assimilating radar data, we could improve the prediction of those events. this is a prediction without any radar observation, and you don't see here any convective structure. If you add radar data, you see this is like a slice. You see a lot of convection happening. But still, despite, and also by assimilating radar sentinel data, you can improve a lot. Now, one question that was raising was the fact if ocean data can help. And what it is very clear is that in the climate modeling, the availability of good ocean data, especially sea surface temperature, is crucial to drive climate models. What it is still matter of discussion is the fact if observation from the oceans, especially sea surface temperature, can steer meteo models through a better prediction. What was implemented by many research groups in Europe, including the one at CIMA, was to try to pass high-resolution observations of sea surface temperature provided by satellite, but maybe one day, why not, also by citizen scientists, at least as validation data, to the meteo models in order to improve the quality. And one of the idea was that the relationship between the information about sea surface temperature at high resolution and the wind over ocean could get a better quality of forecast. Two mechanisms are apparently competing. Those are studied since the middle of the 80s, and the two competing mechanisms, both of them calling for the availability of good sea surface temperature data, are basically recognized like, on one side, the fact that if you have a warm patch of sea surface isolated by neighboring area, this should create locally a low level pressure in the atmosphere, triggering convergence and helping development of a strong thunderstorm. Another mechanism, which seems to be more dominant, is the presence of sea surface temperature gradients, so very localized differences in the temperature of the upper layer of the ocean. We did made some experiments in idealized environment, and we found at the end of the day that the real key mechanism, at least for those events, seems to be the presence of gradients, which implies that if we want to predict better in the future those events, in an ocean which is getting warmer and an atmosphere which is getting warmer, we have to work closely between atmosphere scientists and ocean scientists, harvesting as much as possible ocean atmospheric data, also from citizens, in order at the end of the day to give better forecast. In my opinion, this kind of meetings is really an opportunity to get working more together. I never met before the group represented by NAUTILOS, which is pity because I'm working basically 25 kilometers far from Genoa. But I think that listening to the Nautilus presentation, there is a lot that we can do together to get a better forecast of those events. Thank you, and I hope that the timing was good.
Thank you very much. So, one last question is, okay, so we are thinking about the consumption of citizen science, so probably let's say, final comment is finding a compromise, a balance between the quantity and the quality. Could it be a sort of, way of thinking about the citizen science data?
Yes, absolutely, in the sense that we are aware that the citizen scientist data are raising a number of challenges about the quality control and quality assurance. But if we are capable, and we'll see more on Friday in the exchange project, to collect good data, we can also use those data nearby the coastline, especially to validate satellite data. This is also a key. And putting together all the data through data fusion, for example, techniques, can be a big value for different applications, I'm sure.
So you're also somehow underlining another point that if we collect, citizen science data that are coming from scientific validated tools that are developed in framework of a research project, an international research project, in which we have an international, let's say, effort to design, deploy, and validate this data, that is a very valuable tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a very valuable tool because then you can ingest safely the data in the modeling chains and avoid the nightmare which is garbage in, garbage out. So if the data are quality control, quality assurance, and rich in density, this is a huge value also for the atmospheric prediction in very short range.
Very, very good. Thank you again. Thank you so
Antonio.
much. And so I'm passing the floor to Andrew, because we started discussing about the importance of international collaboration, especially when we are, tackling and dealing with climate change issues. So Andrew, floor is yours.
Right. So thank you. I'd like to step back from what we heard about a very regional climate and the role of the ocean in the regional climate, back out to a global scale and talk about the Southern Ocean observing for a changing climate. And now the Southern Ocean and Antarctica may feel very remote on a sunny day like this, but I'm here to tell you about its importance in global climate and the importance that our observing systems are actually capturing it accurately. Oops. So now I think I have a movie. Hopefully we can make that one work.
It's the arrow down.
Nope. Nope. That one should be applicable.
There should be, yeah, okay.
Oh well. That one should be animated.
It should be a movie. It's an animation.
There we go.
Okay.
Climate change is one of the most urgent issues facing humanity right now, and our oceans play a crucial role in regulating global warming. Oceans absorb vast quantities of heat and carbon dioxide from our atmosphere, greatly reducing the rate of climatic change. So, it's vital that we learn more about how our oceans work so that we can improve our climate predictions and governments and society can plan for our future. Although the Southern Ocean occupies only about 30% of the world ocean, it absorbs about 3/4 of the total oceanic heat uptake and approximately half of the carbon going into the ocean from the atmosphere. That's because of its unique pattern of circulation. It is the key region, globally, where deep waters rise to the surface, allowing new water masses to form and sink back into the ocean. This exposure of deep waters to the atmosphere is fundamental to the exchanges of heat and carbon between the ocean and atmosphere, as well as one of the main mechanisms by which relatively warmer northern waters reach the Antarctic and can drive melting. But the big question is, what will happen to this circulation as our climate changes? If Antarctica continues to melt at current rates, this may interrupt the circulation, leaving more heat and carbon in the atmosphere. Scientists are using ships, satellites, robotic floats and gliders, seal tags, moorings and ice boreholes to monitor how the Southern Ocean is absorbing, storing and circulating heat and CO2 and delivering heat to ice shelves. This data can then be used to accurately model ocean behavior and calculate global circulation patterns. It's critical that we observe and monitor the Southern Ocean in order to understand its unique role in affecting climate change, so governments and society can adapt and become more resilient for the future.
Great. So I think that covered some of the main motivators, which I'll now go into in a little more depth. This is how I like to think of the Southern Ocean. This is the proper projection. It shows it in its right place, right at the centre of the Earth. And you can see that the ocean circulation, this is the only place around Antarctica where all three major ocean basins, Pacific, Indian, Atlantic oceans, can all come together. And it's where the water is exchanged between these ocean basins. And it's also the central hub where vertical circulation happens. So the ocean is the ocean has the vertical circulation of the ocean is a really critical part for storing atmospheric properties such as heat, carbon, oxygen. But really that vertical exchange only happens in a very few key places. One is the North Atlantic. We've probably all heard of the North Atlantic overturning circulation, or the AMOC. But the other part, the other end of it really is all around Antarctica. And it's this circulation that brings really quite old water. So this water here, in the blue, this is circumpolar deep water. It's hundreds of years old. It hasn't seen the atmosphere since pre-industrial times. And the unique circulation around Antarctica, the winds and the particularly the strong cold gradient brings this water up to the surface where it is exposed to atmospheric, so human-induced atmospheric change for the first time. And then it takes up heat, it takes up carbon dioxide, and through a variety of mechanisms, it's actually then pushed back down into the ocean interior around Antarctica. And through this process, something like 90% of all anthropogenic heat generated since the start of the Industrial Revolution has gone into the ocean. So when we talk about climate change, we're really talking about ocean change. And when we're talking about ocean change, we're really talking about the Southern Ocean taking up heat. It is slightly less important proportionally for carbon dioxide, but it's still taking up roughly 40% of all the ocean uptake of carbon dioxide via the Southern Ocean. So if you want to put numbers on that, if you take the approximate rough carbon price and multiply it out by the approximate amount of CO2 being taken up and stored in the ocean interior, you're talking about a climate service of around 50 billion euros per annum. And that's just in carbon services, not to mention its important role in providing nutrients for the global oceans and supporting fisheries over the entire world, not just around Antarctica. But it's changing. The Southern Ocean is changing in quite a rapid way. You may have seen in the news at the moment it is the lowest ever, by a very massive amount, extent of sea ice for this time of year. And we've had over the last 2 years minimums in sea ice. As well as the sea ice, the Antarctic ice sheet itself is changing. This shows changes in the ice sheet thickness over the last 20 or so years. And you can see that over the centre of the Antarctica, it's actually thickening very slightly. This is because warmer air holds more water and it snows more. But around the margins, where the ice meets the ocean, it's melting rapidly, particularly in the West Antarctic Peninsula here. And this is worth around, just this little red patch is about 3 metres of sea level rise, if that was all to melt. But we have very, very limited ability to model how this actually changes over the coming centuries. So the IPCC puts out its AR6 report and puts out a report every 5 or so years, and sea level rise is one of the headline features there. And so you can see from our climate models, the CMEP ensemble, this is the premier ensemble of models from across the globe, all forced with the same conditions. SSP 585, this is a relatively strong forcing scenario, and we see by the end of the century, we get to almost a metre of sea level rise. But the problem with this is Antarctica and Greenland, the ice caps, the ice sheets are actually not modelled in these. They're effectively cold rocks. Snow falls onto them and it runs off. They don't respond to changes in the atmosphere, and they certainly don't respond to changes in the ocean. There's no feedbacks between them. And so to account for this, which is not currently modelled accurately, the IPCC did the best they could. They basically conducted a survey, an expert survey. They went out and asked people their opinions. These lines at the bottom are based on very rigorous fundamental physics in high-performance computing models. And the top line, which could be twice as much, or even 14 metres if you ask some people, is basically very skilled guesswork. So there's a really critical need to include these ice sheets and ocean interactions if we're to understand sea level rise over the coming century, not to mention changes in our weather. So a program, Ocean Ice, which I'm the scientific coordinator of, I'll talk more about this afternoon, is directly addressing that. So the Southern Ocean is really still a huge hole in our observing net, but despite this importance, you can see here, this is our Argo floats, and please don't deploy them like that. That's a very bad way to do it. Argo floats, these blue dots down here around the Southern Ocean, this critical area of overturning, you can see this is where the observations are not happening. That's due to a combination of factors, largely sea ice, but also access. And it's even worse for CO2. So this is observations of PCO2 in the ocean since 1957. You can see colossal holes around Antarctica and Pacific, particularly the Pacific Ocean. And so that's actually one area where citizen science contributions are really helping. So the ocean race in particular in Malaysia, which may in fact have crossed the line just while I'm speaking, it was involved with deploying Argo floats, but also importantly was deploying ocean CO2 measurements. So this is from a race a few years ago in the Vendée Globe race. All the black lines are all the other observations that year. So this is all the science that actually went on all the official research ships cruises. You can see there's almost nothing around Antarctica apart from Drake Passage, but the coloured lines are from the 2 yachts that were carrying these sensors. And so you can see this is actually a really significant proportional of our observations for that year. So this is a really, the ocean race is a really great platform to talk about the need for these more Southern Ocean observations. So I can see Antonio fidgeting, so I'll finish up. Yeah. So to find out more, Ocean Ice, I'll be talking about that more this afternoon, and SOCHIC, this is another program, another Horizon 2020 program that's being led by Jean-Baptiste Salé. That'll be both discussed this afternoon, and you can find out more here. I'll leave, seeing as we've got a yachting theme, here's some of our sail drones being deployed off Cape Town as part of the SOCHIC project. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. Sorry for putting pressure. But you already mentioned, because we have a problem of uncertainty and we also have a problem of gaps. So, what do we still need to learn about oceans and its changes? And how can we decide what research and where to monitor and how to prioritize it?
Yeah, I guess I'm obviously strongly biased towards the Southern Ocean, but I would say that is a really critical area. And as I was saying, the lack of observations and even physical understanding of the interaction between the Southern Ocean and the ice sheets, and indeed the Arctic Ocean and Greenland in the North Atlantic, is a really critical hole in our understanding, both in observations, so they're obviously very difficult areas to get to, which is where innovations in observations and sensors is really helpful. But also there's a big gap in our physical understanding, our ability to actually model these things. So getting those observations, just baseline observations and repeat observations and into spots where we can't get them is really critical at the moment to fill in that gap where we just can't model sea level rise with any accuracy.
Oh, thank you very much. You're really giving me the hand in order to introduce the next panel, because from, observation to understand the climate change, we are now moving to a discussion about how to sustain observation. That is a critical problem. So I want to thank you once again. A big applause to the 3 speakers. And I would like to call on the floor Inga Lips from Eurogoose, Wango, Danu Bezian from EMSO, and Malonis will be remotely connected. And as we said, we are now moving into a panel in which we are discussing about the need for ongoing and better support for ocean observation. Because as we said, we need to collect data. But in order to collect data, we need to have a sustained programs, long-term programs. So Inga, you're representing Eurogoose. You're working on EOS, so please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. As the time is very limited, I will jump into my presentation right away.
It's the arrow down. Yeah.
Okay. Now I don't know which button to press next time because I pressed everything and slides were moving. So I would start with European policies and strategies that member states need to follow. And why I'm starting from that is that there are numerous different policies, and only some of them, maybe most well known, are listed on this slide. These policies are very much integrated. They are shaping observation plans of different nations. They are also forcing towards better coordination, and at the same time, they are also giving us at least a little bit of security of sustainable ocean observations because of the national commitments to these policies. But at the same time, there are also small drawbacks, and one drawback is that those policies do not dictate, which is in some ways good, but they do not dictate how much observations need to be done or where the observations need to be taken. That means that all the nations have their own will and freedom to shape the monitoring programs, and this is mainly shaped according to the budgets available. So they need to provide assessments of the status of the sea area, but these assessments can be quite different in different sea areas depending how much efforts member states are putting into the observations. Okay, that's going back. So the second aspect I would like to draw attention are the research infrastructures, European research infrastructures, which is a great initiative and a great idea how to connect different observing networks in different member states to provide resources and services for research communities and to conduct together best research which is possible and also to foster the innovation. But again, the sustainability of those research infrastructures and research infrastructure projects relies heavily on the national funding. And the second drawback here is that not all member states are involved or engaged into these research infrastructure networks, meaning that, again, these networks are kind of a half part what we can do in Europe. Okay. With these slides, I wanted to show you that if we need to have a better sustainability in our observations, we also need to understand where the gaps are. And I have listed here 4 main gap areas that I think are relevant to understand to really move forward from our activities. And the first one is the spatial gaps, both horizontal and vertical, like we just heard, that there are sea regions where we don't have enough observations, and at the same time also if you look vertically, there are a lot of gaps in deep sea areas to our ability to observe and take samples from the deeper parts of the ocean. The temporal gaps, only few complete long-term time series available, meaning that we rely a lot on short-term research projects, which are excellent because they help us to understand small-scale processes, for example. But short-term projects do not help us to understand the trends and to assess the environment in a way that really gives us enough knowledge on how we should act on the different evolutions in the ocean. There are also parameter gaps. Biochemical and biological variables are sampled much less than physical parameters. And of course, the sustainability gaps, which are connected with the funding mostly. And that means, for example, that 70% of the funding is based mostly on the short-term projects, not on long-term funding. So to be able to kind of fill those gaps, we really need to understand our capabilities. And for that, we need to know what are the assets, what are the performances of those assets, what are the whole European capabilities that we have. But I have listed here several different portals, and I would like to draw attention that this information is scattered. So we don't have, and we really need to work more towards having one simple system to find out these kind of important aspects. And if we have better knowledge what we have, what are our capabilities, we can coordinate and collaborate better in all different levels, national, regional and European level. And I have plotted here some of the coordination activities. So from the regional level, I would like to point out the regional sea conventions, but also the Eurogoose regional systems. And from the European level, of course, the European research infrastructures. And again, as I'm from Eurogoose, I have to promote our activities. We have very good platform-based networks all over Europe. These are our task teams on different platforms. So why we need to coordinate and collaborate is that we really need to share the resources available, not only the infrastructure and funding, but also the human resources, because the research community is limited, and this is something that the policymakers also need to understand. So next level would be really to engage better, to facilitate the better engagement of community, so that we are kind of sharing responsibility with a broader community. The responsibility doesn't rely only on the research community. And I have brought here some of the examples of very good collaborations with industry, with private sector, and with the community as such. So first example is the use of ships of opportunity, volunteer commercial vessels, either passenger vessels or the commercial transport cargo vessels. And this map illustrates here the different lines in Europe where long time already we have equipment installed on board the cargo ferries or passenger ferries, and in collaboration with research institutions, several decades of measurements have been made. The next example is going closer to the general community. So we have a lot of sailors, and we really need to take advantage of their willingness to support the observations. And this example here is from 2021, when the sailing vessel Iris was deploying 100 Argo floats in the Atlantic Ocean, which was a huge support because that meant that we retained the resources, so we didn't need to pay for research vessels to go out to deploy those Argo floats, and also the researchers' time was saved. And of course, as we are here today in Genoa, we can't go over the IMOCA boats, which are about to approach. And I hope that we all can have this chance and meet them during the lunchtime. So that was a great initiative because all those 5 IMOCA boats are carrying the scientific equipment to do the observations in a very remote areas. And they also deployed a lot of different assets like Argo floats and weather buoys. And the last thing I would like to pay attention is communication. Because if we are not able to communicate better the value of ocean data, it's very hard for policymakers and also for the general public to understand why these investments need to be done and all the efforts paid. So that to be able to assess the status of marine environment, to be able to produce indicators or show the trends, we really need the data. And as we also saw from previous talks, that for the ocean weather forecast, the information is very relevant. And I think we are very often taken as a granted that we just open an app or computer to see what is a wave height today, where are the currents going, what is the sea level, and not thinking about how the data are becoming into these products and services that are provided us. And the last thing that, how often do we think about that? All the weather forecasts are really relying on oceanographic data. So this needs to be communicated also much, much better to the policymakers and general public.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's say that a key words in order to let the policymakers and stakeholders understand the importance of data is communication, and provided them with KPIs. Is that, I mean, one key point is the communication towards our stakeholders. Is that? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Of course.
Yes, it is. Okay, good. Now we're moving to Wanho, that is going to present us also the process that they did in order to make, an ERIC, that is a European research infrastructure. That is somehow one way to have long-term plans and have the member state committed in order to sustain the monitoring program as well. So please. Yes, it's coming.
Can you hear me? Well, good morning to everybody. The first thing I want to say is there are too many people there, no? We need these people and much more people if we want to understand what is happening in the ocean. And all of a sudden, we have the United Nations Decade for the Ocean to study, and I think we are right 20 centuries late. It's still not too late, but I think we can do something about it. And one of the things we can do is to work together. If we don't work together, we'll never go anywhere. And this is the reason why I put all the European research infrastructure related to the sea together. We work together, we change data together, we have these similar procedures, and this is the way to go forward. On top of that, we listened before to many speakers talking about projects, about satellites, about many other things, which citizen science, which are all of them, they are very welcome. But at the end of the day, A project is a project, a start and finish. A research infrastructure, I hope, I don't know yet, in a strategy decided by the European Commission for a long term. So all the projects we listen here today, we should have, I mean all these people from EMBRC, Danubius PP, ICOS, LifeWatch, we should have the legacy of what you're doing because you're doing excellent things. For instance, Gabriele was showing about a lot of interesting development of relatively low cost sensors. And I think I want to incorporate this low sensor to my European research infrastructure tomorrow. Not the day after tomorrow, tomorrow already. So having said that, I'm going to make a very fast overview about what is the situation in terms of the research infrastructure in Europe, what we are doing, and where we should go. Well, research infrastructure, as you already know, are large-scale facilities that provide resources, services, not only for the scientific community, because some people think, no, we are working for the scientific community. Big mistake. We are working for scientific community, for stakeholders, for society, and for together with industry. And industry, I didn't hear too much about industry. Industry is a mess. I feel that if we don't have a very good link connection with the industry, we are dead. We stop in few years. I mean, how we can progress, Gabriele, if you don't incorporate small, whatever sensors at different depth? I don't know how to do it. We can go back to the older time that people was listening on the behavior of the body and say, well, tomorrow is going to rain, no? Well, this was the weather prediction long ago. Well, outreach is another important point, and as well as providing important information to data aggregators and to operational services as Copernicus. All these marine research infrastructures are the European marine observation landscape. And through this cooperation, coordination, integration, we provide significant socioeconomic benefit because it's also important. And I think it's one of the key pillars for the European ocean observing system. What you see here, the 3 or 6 European research infrastructure more important related with the sea. So Eric, we are pushing and leading this convergence of all our friends in the different research infrastructure. We have fixed point seafloor and water column observatory, which is an Eulerian observatory. EuroArgo, as you know, for global network and profiling float, Lagrangian. LifeWatch for biodiversity and ecosystem. EMBRC for study marine biology, biological resources. ICOS to study the uptake of CO2, which is critical and fundamental for climate change, ocean acidification, and so on. Not only at sea, but the sea is 3/4 of the planet. So when we should call the planet ocean instead of Earth, because the ocean is the larger part of the planet. Danubius, which is studying this contact point between the river and the sea. I want to show this very briefly, because what we need is a multi-platform observation coming from gliders, cable observatories, ocean buoy, Argo floats, whatever. I mean, even more things. And I don't know, some of you mentioned in the beginning this morning about, before we were talking about collection of data. No, now we talk about high quality data. And you know why high quality data is so important? Because otherwise machine learning doesn't work. I mean, if you don't have high quality data, how the machines are going to be connected is impossible, or maybe they are connected and they will produce models that nobody will understand. I made some compilation of the magnetic data last century, and I arrived to the conclusion that few lines which are very bad data was a mess, was a disaster. So we need to make a crossover analysis, delete the bad data, and all of a sudden we saw the light. Say, well, this looks reasonable. So if you see a part of the things of the observing the ocean, which is fundamental, we are producing already 5 million of jobs along the European Union, which is very important. And these new jobs are related with the blue growth, which is also very important. So we have to think of serving, producing information to the citizens, and providing new type of jobs. And if you, I don't know if I can show here. Well, if you can see here, this, the distribution of companies funded by the Blue Invest sector, you see that at the end, almost 70% are related with the marine services, fisheries, water distillation, and blue biotechnology. So, which is the new era. Things are changing slowly at the level of the business at sea. Well, global change, well, I briefly say this is a sort of an alarm. If you see this example of how declines in nature, 40% in ecosystem and extent decline on average, 25 on species extinction risk, 23 in ecological communities, 82, which is an incredible amount. Biomass and space abundance, this is fundamental for the acidification of the ocean. Nature for indigenous people and local communities, this is also something very important. And I have been last week in Canada, and these people, they already took a decision which I think is wonderful. They incorporate in many of the ocean observing system the indigenous people in the boarding of the institution. They want to listen to these people, how the climate change, how the ocean affect their life. And the conclusion is really spectacular. I mean, these people, they have something to say, and we need to listen to the indigenous people. Well, we are EMSO-ERIC, we are autonomous and legal status, participating right now by 8 European countries, and the headquarters are in Rome, which is very funny. Nobody knows why we are in Rome. Maybe it's to be close to the heaven through the Pope, because we are 22 kilometers far from the shore. EMSO aims is to promote excellent science through the coordination of the different distributed infrastructure, up to 14 observatories serving marine science, technology engineers, policymakers, industry, and the general public. Well, very fast is the distribution of the observatories from the gate to the Arctic in the North Seas, across the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. We are in total 27 research institutions, and we have 11 deep sea observatories, cable and standalone. Cable has the advantage that we have energy, and I can manipulate from my home with a laptop, even the sample rate of whatever, or with almost most of the sensors. And this is the future, but okay, the future is complicated because cables, observatories are very costly. Well, at the end, what we intend to do, and the target is to understand what are the interaction between the geosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, and atmosphere. Well, this is a sequence of different type of research facilities within the EMSO-ERIC, observing different essential ocean variables. Most of the laboratories, the observatories, we are recording temperature, salinity, CO2 content, etc., and some more specific in the Mediterranean basin. They are more focused, apart of in the environmental parameters, on geohazard parameters due to the fact that the seismicity and volcanology is quite important in the area. Well, EMBRC, this is one of the key members in the community of observing the ocean, because the ocean, and this is something we are promoting till now, we have operational oceanography, but we don't have any operational biology. Does not exist yet, and I think this is important to incorporate biology at the level of the oceanography, because we have the tools, we have the power in terms of computer to exchange, to have for the first time multidisciplinary approach. Multidisciplinary approach is not that one person is coming and the other one to a research vessel to do biology and there is a period and another one is coming to do geophysics. It's working all together at the same time, and it's possible now. Well, this is a map that already was shown probably about the distribution of the Argo float all over the ocean worldwide, and in this particular case on the right side, in Europe, the difference is the yellow dots are the Argo floats, the blue from national countries, the blue also Argo from Euro Argo floats, red is ICOS-ERIC, and green is EMSO-ERIC. Well, this is also an important way, as I mentioned before, we are working all together, but especially in some cases, it is almost obvious. Euro Argo and EMSO, we should go together on the benefit of the information and on the efficiency of the process, because many times we deploy Euro Argo buoy, but at the same time we are doing some maintenance on one of the fixed point observatories or one of the mooring observatories. So we are observing in the same places, we are complementary in many aspects. And when the people say, well, it's a sort of overlapping, I say, I don't have any problem with a little bit of overlapping, because when we have a little bit of overlapping means that we understand each other. We can talk about something together. Well, this is a good example of what happened. You remember probably this explosion of the Cumbre Vieja. I'm out of the time. Well, 1 minute. Cumbre Vieja explosion was in September 2021, and we took a very fast action. We bring edging, which is an EMSO generic instrument model, plenty of sensors to understand how was the impact of active volcano near shore in terms of temperature, salinity, CO2, and acoustic. We still processing the millions of data we recorded because the volcano stopped, well, after 3 months in Christmas 2021. And the data are very interesting, and which is incredible. After 1 year, if we go there and we measure again, look like nothing happened only 1 year ago. Well, the Western Union Sea Facility, these are another important thing that I mentioned already, is the type of information which is not only is a matter of temperature, salinity. The ocean produce most of the big earthquake happen on Earth. For instance, the Fukushima earthquake produced up to 9 points in the gross domestic product in Japan, produce a change in the use of nuclear power, produce a change on the date, because now the axis of rotation of the Earth changed to 25 microseconds less than before, so the days are not similar as before. Well, this simply show how the summary is that the marine research infrastructure are key large tools to understand the complexity of the marine environment using multidisciplinary approach. They play a key role in strengthening safety and security and mitigate multiple risks, not only climate change, but many others like geological hazards. And as I mentioned before, provide a high quality, sustained service of regional and of global impact to multiple stakeholders. And I think that this is supposed to be all. Well, I can finish with this because why integration is fundamental. First, to enhance monitoring capacity. Second, to improve the quality control strategy, which to my understanding is a fundamental aspect of whatever we are doing when we are acquiring data. To develop and test new technologies, to follow all of us together at the same time best marine practice, and to plan a more sustainable research. And now I am really finished. Beautiful extreme condition life and hydrothermal vent in Azores. And thank you very much for your attention. Sorry for
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marco. And in the interest of time, we just pass to Manolis, that is remotely connected. Manolis, yeah, floor is yours.
Yes. Good morning, everybody.
Sorry to put some pressure on you. You need to be very fast.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Manolis Dumas from the Hellenic Center of Marine Research, and I was there both as an oceanographer and as a sailor. So first in oceanography, I'm going to give a technology point of view of our ocean observation. In oceanography, we measure parameters that's related to the essential ocean variables. And we use this observation for the study of the key ocean phenomena that need to be observed or derived. I refer to derived because although we use a lot of different technologies, mechanical, sensor, electronics, acoustics, advanced optical sensor, or wet chemistry analyze, we still are not quite 100% satisfied by our measurement, meaning, okay, if we consider our physical parameters as sensors in terms of technology maturity level, we measure pretty fine the physical parameters. When it comes to chemical parameter or biological parameter, there is a lot of room for improvement there. Actually, this can be explained because accuracy requires, as a first step, international reference standards that only exist for physical parameters. So that's why, although we produce a lot of data sets, the majority, as it's highlighted here, this is a print screen from the Copernicus Marine in situ TAC services, refer to temperature and salinity, meaning the physical parameter that is well defined. These core parameters are very useful for the derived parameter as salinity, dissolved oxygen, and pH. So probably that's explained that why the majority of our data set contain these parameters. So how we operate the sensor we are using for observation? We operate as the simplest solution will be a standalone sensor that we operate autonomous, and we don't give any real-time data back to the community. But we also operate sensor hosted in platforms, that the platforms handles the data logging, the power supply, and automated transmit the real-time data and the metadata. This is a print screen from a publication from Johnson et al. That show how, for oxygen measurements, the Argo floats replace the ship-going missions to measure oxygen at a water depth below 900 meters. So from the conventional oceanography back in the 70s, now the dominant is the automated platforms that collect and transmit data to our data centers. So this is like an example of how an observing system, an ocean observing system, actually transforms from what used to be, this is my regional system, the Poseidon system in the Eastern Mediterranean, for what used to be back in 2000, some only buoys, surface buoys collecting data. Now, after 20 years, there is like buoys, multiparametric buoys, HF radar, cable observatories, Argo floats, land-based sea level station, ferry boxes, gliders, mooring line, autonomous seabed platforms, and this is a transforming community, a transforming system that needs to be able to transform itself to serve the needs. So what happens from it? What happened to technology demands? We have like different type of sensor, and that needs to be integrated in different types of platforms. There is complexity and challenge behind this. So we coordinate our efforts using the Eurocos umbrella, and we have divided some task teams to be able to handle all different platforms and find the forum to be able to share best practices, experience, and move forward with that. Because that's what we need to deliver as operators of observatories to the society, actually. We need to go from our raw data to improve our raw data and finally produce, as I saw here, as you can see here in the final plot, the final product that will be useful for both science and society, valid data. And of course, our valid data at the end, although we spent a lot of effort, time, and money, there's going to be gaps. And these gaps are caused by regular funding of our observatories. There's not challenges that we cannot deal with that in the scientific community, but there are challenges that, it's out of our hands to be able to handle it. So in the NAUTILOS, taking all of this under account, in the NAUTILOS project, we're going to create a new generation of cost-effective samplers and sensors. There's going to be 3 different technologies in total. And our development is going to be guided by the objective of scalability, modularity, cost-effectiveness, and open source availability of software products and the products and the sensor itself. And we're going to use the technology readiness level as a guide to be able to have discrete and clear steps for the development of this type of sensor. There's some examples of these sensors that's going to deal with, traditional parameters also. We're going to produce some really miniaturized CTD sensors, and we're hoping that there's going to be mass production of them in the future, going to have salinity and conductivity measurements even embedded in smart devices. Going to have innovating parameters like low-level radioactivity sensors that we're going to be able to operate all the way down to more than 2,000 meters, but we're going to improve also the existing ones. In the upper panel, you can see 3 generations of dissolved oxygen sensors. Now the NAUTILOS is working with a really tiny ones using fiber optics to measure oxygens. And for the first time, it's going to be able to integrate it to animal tags, and going to use animal tags to collect dissolved oxygen data. So why we need to upgrade the technologies? Because by upgrading the technologies, we're going to improve the data. This is an example of dissolved oxygen data that with the introduction of the new generation of optical sensor, you see that they have become more valid, more accurate, more robust as a data set at the end.
Only 2 minutes.
Yes, and we're going to demonstrate all the sensors we're developing in NAUTILOS in different regions of our common global ocean, and using a lot of demonstration platform like fisheries observing systems, aquaculture observing system related to the industry of aquaculture, marine mammal monitor system, platforms of opportunity, already existing scientific infrastructure as the EMSO M3A station in the Aegean Sea, Argo platforms, and animal-borne instruments. Why? I use this illustration from the Minke project, just to be able to see what we need to have a correlation between the scientific infrastructures, ships of opportunity, industry infrastructures, or even citizen science. Because we are not living in an ideal world, we're never going to have the ideal case for our measurements, that we're going to have plenty of stations that provide accurate measurements. So the solution will be to have the observatories we have for an accuracy-based approach, gonna enhance our capabilities with the citizen science networks and opportunities to have the completeness-based approach, and gonna use data fusion to have the optimal products that combines both of these data sources. And I would like to trigger a question, because we are on the Ocean Week, on the Ocean Race. This is the reality with the map that illustrates the ship density in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Although this is the high density map with 1,000 of ship transit, the reality is here that there's only one commercial ship collecting data in this area. And I think this should be triggered one kind of question here of how we are going to work on this, how we're going to bring the science actually together with society to collect data for our common goal, to be able to produce valid data products for science, for society. Thank you.
Thank you, Manolis, very much. And I want to thank again the panel. And I want to thank Manolis because you made a perfect assist in order to introduce also the next panel. Because now, from observation, we are also, discussing about the importance of closing the data and knowledge gaps. So this is somehow, really referred to your last slide. So I would like to invite Flavio Martins on the floor, Kit Larkin, and Taco De Bruin on the floor. Taco, Kit, please come here. So it will be easier than to start. And yes, Flavio, you're going to start. So there you are, the microphone. There you are, the controller. Arrow down to go ahead. Sorry for speeding up a bit, but we need to recover a bit of time.
I will try my best.
Whatever you want, Kate. Yep. If you want to sit here. Okay. If you want to
So, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Antonio, for this kind invitation. So I'm very happy that we start this meeting today talking about the digital twins of the ocean. So I will try to elaborate a little bit on that on the coastal level. So a small summary of what we are going to present. I will skip this just to be fast. The first message I want to pass is that the ocean is global. And because the ocean is global, there is no point on focusing our observations just in a specific region of the ocean. We must observe the entire ocean. There was a few presentations today that already talk about this, but it's always good to remember that we really need to observe the ocean as a whole. And we need to observe many different processes in many different scales, spatial scales and temporal scales, spatial scales that can go from thousands of kilometers down to less than millimeters, and temporal scales from centuries to seconds. And to address all these processes, we need many different types of sensors and many different types of missions to address this. So currently, as you know, the data is centralized in the Earth observation data is centralized in GEOS. And specifically, the ocean data is managed globally by GOOS. And we have, in fact, GOOS is an alliance of systems, of networks. We have EuroGOOS. We had before here talking about EuroGOOS. And EuroGOOS have many different aspects, many different platforms, and many different sensors. And even though there is a lot of gaps in the data. And besides that, we need to forecast the future. And data can help us to understand the processes, but can't help us forecasting the future. So we need to pick all this data and implement models that can forecast the future. So currently, Mercator Ocean is doing that for Copernicus in the European level. So it creates global models for the entire world that can then be used for different kind of activities, social activities that are important for the humanity. But these models are not adequate to address small-scale processes close to the coast because they are global models. So in the last decades, let's say, we have been moving towards downscaling of these solutions into local models, and these local models have a higher resolution and are able to address problems that are important for the society close to the coast. So they pick global model data as boundary conditions and also observations to create these local models. And these local models are starving for data. I want to show you this picture because you have been seeing this many times today. You see these very nice points here. You cannot see it. So the small points are the Argo buoys, and the green points are fixed sensors, and the red ones are seafloor sensors. So it seems that the ocean is pretty much well observed. But if we move to the local scale, so these are the Argo buoys that were active a few days ago. I took this from the Argo platform. So it seems a lot of data. But if we move into the regional area, so this is the Iberia coast, on that day, these were the only buoys that were present there. And if we want to focus on a local system, for example, the coast of Algarve, where I'm coming from, you see, and that day we had 1, 2, 3 buoys. And in some days we don't have any buoy. This is just the Argo, but the situation is the same for every sensor. So basically, the data that we have is quite good, let's say, for global systems, for global modeling, but it's not enough for local models. So we really need to go closer to the coast and get more data close to the coast. I also want to show you this picture because we are supposed to talk about data gaps. This is a very interesting picture because it shows the color is the number of global observations as a function of depth and as a function of time. And we see that until 1980s, we had almost 0 observations below, let's say, 500 meters. And then suddenly we start having more observations below those 500 meters. And after 2000, we start having, probably due to the Argo buoys, we start having more observations up to the, or down to the 2000 meters. But below 2000 meters is almost 0. So we see that the largest part of the ocean is unknown. So we're really starving for observations in the ocean, and in the deep ocean, it's really important. As again, the ocean is global, so we need to observe the entire ocean, not only just a region of the ocean. So, and I want to link this with the models. So to link this with the models, I want to show you this picture, is the evolution of computational power in time. So the y-axis is calculations per second of a CPU. And please note, this is a logarithmic scale, you see? The vertical scale is a logarithmic scale. And even though we are increasing like that. And in the near future, people from IT are promising us very nice things, like quantum computing and DNA computing and things like that, that will be here in a decade, we hope. So our power to create those digital twins that were being discussed is really big. But for that, we need more data. So the highest the computation power, the higher the need we have for data. So basically, what we foresee is increases in spatial and temporal resolution. So we will be able to include more subscale, sub-mesoscale processes. We already are able to do that, but even more processes like that will be included, and advances in data assimilation. So all that needs data, is starving for data. So I will pass a little bit. And so this is Nautilus. There were already a few presentations, so I will pass these slides. Nautilus is developing some of those sensors, and it will democratize the observation of the oceans, we hope. Okay, so nice sensors. But we are also using models in Nautilus. And we are using models not to forecast the ocean. We are using models to do what is called observing system simulation experiments. And those experiments means we are using models to predict what will be the impact of more sensors in our predictions. So we are doing experiments that are proving the improvement of the models due to the new sensors. So that's the kind of experiments we are doing it in the coast of Algarve by us, CIMA, in the Mediterranean by HCMR, and in a fjord in Norway by NIVA. And we are also distributing this data to the data providers using advanced AirDAP data servers, and all the data that we are producing is being disseminated. Okay, so some conclusions. So ocean observation is tough and costly, and ocean observation is needed to drive ocean forecasting. Computer power is improving, and this also demands more observations. and Nautilus is contributing to that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabio. Thank you very much. So, you see, Nautilus is also, collecting new observation, and the European House for the Observation, in situ observation, is EMODNET. So, Kate, I would like to invite you on the floor and help us to understand how can we ensure that we have the necessary resources to support and address ocean observation gaps and continue to advance our understanding in the ocean also.
Thank you very much. So when the slides come, it's a real pleasure to be here on behalf of the eMODNET network, and there are a number of experts also from the wider eMODNET network also here. So you'll hear from more of us this afternoon as well, particularly the chemistry and physics thematics. But I would like now to present to you in a few minutes the European Marine Observation and Data Network. This is an operational EU marine data service focused, as Antonio introduced, on the in-situ component, so the in-water measurements. I will not be speaking about modelling or satellite data because that is the work of the Copernicus Marine Service, with whom we work and collaborate very much. So this has been explained very well in the earlier session, but just to reiterate, there are many different stakeholder communities collecting ocean data. And the in-situ data themselves are very complex and diverse. You can imagine all the different platforms, all the different parameters and variables, the coast to the open ocean, the surface to the deep sea. It's a really complex data management conundrum, you could say. And also to have high quality data that's also then made available in a fair way. So it's not just put in a database somewhere and locked away in someone's computer, but it's really standardized, harmonized, and made findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable, so that it's available to all for many different applications, with the idea that you collect the data once and then you use it many times. So the solution in Europe for the in-situ marine data component is eMODNET, as I introduced at the beginning. Just diving in a little bit more detail, you can see on the left-hand side the different thematic areas of eMODNET, and within those 7 domains you have hundreds of ocean variables, environmental parameters, but also human activities, and the power is really bringing those two together. If we want to tackle climate change and the understanding of ocean change and climate change, we also need to bring in the human impact and human element. And the added value of eMODNET is it not only sources and aggregates the data, but it really standardizes and harmonizes those data to both European standards, so geospatial standards, and also international standards, particularly for the metadata that describe the data. There are also added value data products that the eMODNET community create for the European Commission, and these are completely free and open for use. They have a Creative Commons BY 4.0 data license available to all. And the eMODNET offer focuses on European seas because that's where the European Union wants to have the highest resolution of data, but we have a lot of collaborations internationally to make available beyond European seas as well. So in a nutshell, you can see eMODNET, there's been a lot of evolution in the more than 10 years that eMODNET has existed. And in January this year, there was a huge milestone that eMODNET reached, which launched a new, updated and upgraded eMODNET portal. All of the information still exists that was there before, but all of the thematic data portals that you may have seen previously have been integrated and centralized into the eMODNET website, where you can discover, visualize, and download all the data and data products. There's one central map viewer where you can select an area of the ocean and pull all of the eMODNET data that you would want. And there's an integrated metadata catalog. So for the first time, you can, from one location, really search across all of the eMODNET offer. And I would just say as well that a really unique point of eMODNET is both its diversity in all of the in-situ data that it provides, its comprehensivity, because it really brings together a lot of in-situ data from diverse communities, so it's the highest resolution for a lot of the parameters, and the community as well. You can see all of the partners and the experts that are involved that are really behind the scenes making eMODNET what it is. I'm going to skip through these very quickly in the interest of time. But as I mentioned, there's now really common features with common map viewer, common metadata catalog, and information on the EMODnet portal. Here you have an example of the map viewer itself, which is showing the vessel density, which is created from AIS data that's been brought together from many different sources, including the private sector. And the thematic information is still accessible, very much so, with all the tools and guidelines that the users are used to. In terms of near real-time data as well, EMODnet offers dashboards, particularly from the physics thematic that Antonio and ETT lead. And for the Ocean Race 2023, there's a collaboration with EMODnet and also other data services such as SOCAT for ocean carbon and Copernicus Marine Service. And EMODnet is streaming the ocean physics data in real time, and the ocean chemistry data will be made available once it's been properly quality controlled. Then, because we are talking about data gaps, looking at data adequacy, I just wanted to spend a couple of slides on the fact that EMODnet is really spanning the marine knowledge value chain. It's adding value in the middle, really the data service, but it's connecting with the ocean observing community for the data, connecting with the users for their user needs and requirements. And EMODnet also then brings those user needs and requirements into the evolution of its service and also into conversations with the ocean observing system so that we have a really upgraded and integrated system that really fills the gaps where they're most needed. In 2013 to 2018, EMODnet conducted quite a unique method, which was called a sea basin checkpoint experiment. Had user applications that were posed, and then you had to really stress test the EMODnet system and see if the data were fit for use, if there were good enough data, if there were the right parameters, the right geography, etc. And this was a very interesting method that was done at the regional sea level. It's then been discussed as a community, and there are other methods like the OSSI methods we just heard about in the previous speaker that look from the modeling perspective, and it's very interesting to see how all of these methods could come together to really inform about marine data gaps and inform ocean observing design. And just very quickly to note that in that checkpoint exercise, one of the big gaps that came out was in fact for human activities for the vessel density that the community really wanted these data, and EMODnet listened, and the Commission funded then a work plan for human activities to offer a composite map in this area, and it's now used by many users including Frontex. Then in terms of biology, there are many gaps, of course. We've heard that biology and marine biodiversity is one of the major gaps. It's really evolving. There's a lot more data coming in, but it's just to show that that's really progressing. So in terms of EMODnet biology, it spans phytoplankton up to marine mammals, but also including seabirds, and that was a very big gap a couple of years ago, and now EMODnet biology is working with many data providers to address that. My last couple of slides. So EMODnet is really, the data and the data products are used for EU policy implementation, and I'll be speaking this afternoon about that, but also it's evolving. So the infrastructure of EMODnet is working very closely with Copernicus Marine Service to create the backbone for this future digital twin ocean, which we heard about earlier. And that's really going to be a step change for offering data in a common data lake with many different analysis tools so that we can up the game, basically, in terms of climate scenario and prediction. So thank you for your attention, and please join us this afternoon for more information.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you very much. And as you said, I mean, EMODnet is a European answer to this, but we are dealing with an international problem. So I would like to welcome Taco and help us to understand also how we are dealing with the international data framework.
Thank you. Okay. If one thing is clear from today, from this morning, is that there are many, many observing systems. And there is also, I mean, those many local, offshore, national coast, regional systems, global systems for many different parameters, etc., etc., etc. And that results in also many different data systems. Now, there is a lot of work going on in integrating those data systems, EMODnet being a prime example of this, of open systems, of having fair findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable systems, etc. But still, we end up with many systems. One example from the polar community is that for the Southern Ocean, we made a survey of the data systems. There were over 100 data systems and data sources to be found. And that poses a big problem because it is not possible to get it easily a global overview of all the data. As Flavio just pointed out, the ocean is global. We should have a global system and not a, we should emphasize the fact that it is a global system. Bigger problem is that no meaningful gap analysis is possible if you don't have this global overview. Now that's where digital ecosystems come in play. A digital ecosystem is just like a natural ecosystem, interacting data systems, interacting data sets, and everybody can enter the ecosystem, digital ecosystem, get access to data, find data, and can contribute data to the system. Actually, what we need is a family of interoperable digital ecosystems. One such digital ecosystem is the Ocean Info Hub system being developed by IUD. And that.
Yeah, arrow down.
Different, no. Okay. IUD is the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange program of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. And IUDE consists of some 58 national oceanographic data centers, 40 associate data units, and an associate data unit is either a regional organization, ICE is an example, or an institute with a data center, etc. And 6 associate units, the libraries. IUD has a project office in Ostend, Belgium, hosted by the Flanders Marine Institute at the Inn of Ocean campus, and you can read the mission of IUDE. As I said, IUD has developed as a project the Ocean Info Hub project, and Ocean Info Hub is a global initiative to improve equitable access to ocean information, metadata, and knowledge products. And that's where these notes come in. It links independent partners to the convention of the ODIS Data and Information System. That's called a system, but actually it's a set of rules how to communicate, how to integrate. It's a 4-year project. We are now in June 2023, and we still have 1 year to go. It's important to notice that it's not a new system, Ocean Info Hub and ODIS, but it's connecting existing and future data and information system in a sustainable, interoperable, inclusive, and open way, composed of nodes to which data providers can share data, metadata, that is find, but also contribute to it. Does not depend on a central web, because the web, the internet itself is the collective hub. And then something about complete ownership and control, and other things which, yeah, important one is the final bullet, that the architecture, ODIS, is very lightweight, easy to apply, and workflows do not need to change. So you can easily become a node in this network. This ODIS architecture uses schema.org. Is a decentralized interoperability architecture. And it's important to notice that, as with natural ecosystems, ODIS will be resilient to the gain or loss of parts, accommodate a high diversity of products and services while maintaining its core functions. Here is an overview of the partners which are currently being indexed and discoverable through the ODIS infrastructure, to the Ocean Info Hub project. In green, that's already indexed, and in the white, programs and projects and activities that's being developed, it's ongoing activity. In summary, connects existing and future data and information systems. It has a very lightweight architecture. Anyone, so it's very democratic, anyone can link in and contribute records, and data and information owners retain complete control of their own data. And finally, Ocean Info Hub as a digital ecosystem can provide the necessary global overview to perform meaningful gap analysis. And my final slide is some resources available. You can find more here in the, especially the documentation part. There's also a course available which is still online. And if you have more questions, you may ask me today. But if you really want to know details about it, then please contact the project manager, Lucy Scott from UNESCO.
Thank you, Taco. Thank you very much. And somehow you are already addressing, the next session, because we are moving. I like very much the motto that you have there, one planet, one ocean. And we need to involve all these stakeholders. So we have passed by, the importance of ocean observation in climate change. We discussed about the need for sustained and supported actions, the importance of knowledge and data gaps to close these gaps. And now we need to discuss about a balance between action and observation. So I would like to invite Jan Bart here, that somehow is also, he himself is doing this evolution from the European scale to the global scale, because you are now working for UNESCO, so I'll leave you to present yourself a bit more about your position and to introduce the panel. Because in this panel, I would like to invite on the floor Luca Dixi, that is from Outdoor Portofino, Francisco Campuzano, that is from Colab Atlantic, Giovanni Caprino from the Ligurian District of Marine Technology, and Andrea Minerdo from the National Observatory of Marine Technology. So we said we are going to discuss with stakeholders. Here we have a good example of different stakeholders, because we have, people coming from the citizen science part, Luca. We have people from the industry, Giovanni. We have people from NGO, Andrea, and we have people from the science and the university, Francisco. So Jan Bart, I leave the floor to you to introduce the session, and then we discuss all together about the topic.
Thank you, Antonio. And yes, I think my introduction will follow on very nicely from Taco's lifting up to the global, and the global was already mentioned several times. Obviously, everything that we do locally, nationally, but also European, it is important that it contributes to our global activities, because obviously our challenges are global in nature. So while I was very active in the European Marine Observation and Data Network before, as you mentioned, this is my first public performance as the lead of the newly established Decade Coordination Office for Data Sharing. So I'm very happy to make the bridge between all the previous presentations and lead on to the roundtable and to share a few reflections on the importance that IOC UNESCO under the decade is attributing to ocean observing and data sharing, data management in general, and some of the activities that we are undertaking to bring it all together, because it's a huge challenge. And in a way, what Taco was explaining, this digital ecosystem that needs to support all our activities and scientific knowledge generation for solutions is a challenge that we're tackling at the European level, but is very similar at the global level. So I think you're all very familiar with the Ocean Decade by now, so I'm not going to dwell upon it too much. But Kestutis Sedaukas already mentioned it in the introduction. The reason for the decade is really that when the UN General Assembly, after developing the UN Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 14, very well known to all of you, realized that, first of all, the investments in tackling Sustainable Development 14, which deals with anything related to water, and life under the surface, the investments are really lagging a lot behind with all of the other investments to tackle the other challenges, and that our scientific knowledge to be able to tackle some of the challenges was really largely insufficient. So in order to address that, the UN General Assembly charged IOC UNESCO to develop a very ambitious 10-year plan to lift up our scientific activities, the way we do science, but also the level at which we do science, to be able to generate the knowledge we need to be able to tackle some of these grand societal challenges. The implementation plan that IOC UNESCO developed put forward 10 big challenges, and 2 of them, challenge 7 and 8, are dealing with ocean observing and creating a digital representation of the ocean, which is really dealing with creating this dynamic map, unlocking all of the data and information in a viable and fit-for-purpose digital ecosystem that Taco was already referring to. And really, these 2 challenges underpin all of the other challenges, and it really stems from the understanding that the digitization, the accessing, the data management, and most importantly, the use of data information and knowledge is really the cornerstone of the success of the decade in tackling the Sustainable Development Goals. For that reason, in 2022, a group of 25 experts was brought together to develop a data and information strategy. And this was released earlier this year. And it put forward 5 strategic objectives to work towards a globally distributed, trusted, inclusive and interconnected ocean data and information ecosystem. The 5 strategic objectives are to develop an ocean digital ecosystem that encourages the sharing and equitable access of multidisciplinary data, information and knowledge by all. That really means that everybody should be able, wherever you are, whatever your capabilities, to not only use, but also contribute to this digital ecosystem. The second objective is to improve data and information discovery and usability across the digital ocean ecosystem. That's really dealing with the FAIR principles. Yeah? Third, building trust in data and information shared across the ocean digital system, very important across all of the different value chain aspects. You need to have trust. It's about provenance, transparency, metadata that has clear terms of use. Fourth, the prioritization of digital solutions that support decisions for sustainable ocean management. Obviously, you need to start with the user requirements first. So the whole process of co-development, co-design is essential in this process. And fifth, we need to mobilize the community to make this happen. Very important. In terms of prioritization, because where do we start? There are a lot of gaps. It's important to start with asking those who need to develop the solutions. So there is a process under the decade which is called Vision 2030, which will interrogate all of the activities, the scientific communities that are dealing with the 10 challenges, to formulate where are their priorities, where are the gaps that they're struggling with. All of that will be presented next year at the at the Barcelona Ocean Decade Conference next year in April. Okay, a few words about this digital ecosystem, because we keep on talking about it. It's a bit conceptual, but what can we say about it? If you really try to break it down, and Taco already alluded to it, in fact, we are not looking for one mega centralized digital ecosystem, but really a federated, distributed system of many digital ecosystems. In fact, for each problem, if you like, you would have a similar sort of system where at the top, at the surface, you have the end-user application that can be a digital twin application, can be a decision support system, an application on your phone, a particular product that a user requires. That's what we all see. But that can only be useful if the plumbing underneath is in order. And that's often below the surface, not very visible, not very sexy. It's about collecting the right information in the right way, sharing it, making it available for those who need to analyze, process, and forecast. And these different ecosystems also need to be interconnected. in an interoperable way. And that's so important that we need to do a focused and coordinated approach to bring these different components together, but also mobilize these communities themselves. And this is not unique to the global system, right? It's at all levels that we need to do this. So for that reason, under the decade, we had set up 3 coordination offices, one for ocean observing under Goose, one for data sharing, which is falling under IODE, and Mercator Ocean has developed or set up Decade Coordination Center for ocean prediction. So since June, we have set up the DCO on ocean data sharing. Obviously, it's only a couple of weeks, so there's not much that we've done yet, but we want to be as useful to the community as possible, so to really link the needs with what is available already in the community. So we manage that data sharing component of the digital ecosystem. We will be focusing very much on Ocean Decade Challenge 8, creating this digital representation of the ocean and dynamic map. In a way, you could say, what we did with EMODnet, we would like to see at the global level. Yeah? So we will be operationalizing it and trying to secure continuation. Everybody, of course, is looking for funding, so that's going to be a challenge that is shared. We are going to work to implement this data and information strategy together with the other entities and very much look towards you, towards the community of practice to help us with these very ambitious goals. And I think I will leave it at that in the interest of time. So we will be engaging and we'll hopefully get your full support to lift this up to the global dimension. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan-Bart. But I think that you said, a couple of very important words, and especially we are speaking about engagement. Engagement is a wider engagement, so we need to engage also people that are coming from different communities. So here we have, for example, people coming from the city. I use this one. We have people coming from the citizen science, people from the industry, people from the, sorry, just a second, we make it easy. I just remove this one. Okay, this is here. So, I would like to start with the industry, because sometimes we mentioned quite a lot of time, the importance of sharing data, collecting data, developing new system. I would like to ask Giovanni, from your experience as a director of the Ligurian District of Technology, Marine Technology, you were also director of the Blue Innovation Growth Cluster of Italy. Which is the point of view of industry? How can industry contribute to all this process?
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this opportunity. I remain surprised today. I will learn a lot of observation is very interesting. I am here. My position is very difficult. I come from industrial. I come from Fincantieri, just to have an idea with my job. I am a naval architect, and I am general manager of Liguria, a cluster of maritime technology, and I am also a chairman of national cluster on a blue economy. And what is the real situation at this moment is the industrial people. Our industrial and blue economy, very high technology industrial. We are leader in the world for the construction of a pleasure boat, cruise ship, and also for a naval ship. It's not so beautiful, but we are also leader on a naval ship. And our industrial is very, very high technology industrial. Now what is I see in this year is really change of the paradigm of the people work. I generally say there are no time for Guelfi and Ghibellini. It's the time of the Dante period, but it's the time of the people are interested to work all together. And it's not easy because sometimes the industrial people, I see who destroyed the world, but it's not really. We are all destroyed the world in this moment. We have one world, one ocean, but we are here to discuss what is necessary to do, but in the same time we have air conditioning, microphone, plastic, and so on. And is industrial people is very, very interesting to work together with research to improve the technology in this right direction, in this sense. And in this moment, it's necessary work all together by research people, university people, and industrial people to find exactly what is a right solution. The industrial people in general ask, well, what is the future? And it's not so easy. If you ask you what is a best car you can buy in the future, and touch your money, touch your life, and it's not easy to understand what is the best solution. Is a hybrid car, full hybrid, full electric? I don't know. And your car, your investment is one investment only for 5-10 years. It's not so important. If you put this question of the owner, what is the ship of the future, and you must make an answer for 40 years. This is the time of the life of one ship. Is 20, is young, is a new ship. For other 20 years is a ship running. And what is the future of what is the best solution on this moment? It's very, very difficult, and the people ask to push of the research to have some answer in this sense. And the answer is not mean the moda is or the sensitive, but it's a real answer. And is very, very interesting on that, and of course, observation, ocean observation, I completely agree with important to start with the good data and to start with the digital twin of the ocean. All industrial is the right direction on this sense, and that's very important on that. And thank you, and is time running. I see some sail far is maybe with the finish of the ocean race today. Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you, Giovanni. Yes, they're going to come soon. I guess we are very close to the arrival of the first one. But we spoke about the industry, and so it's important also to guide the industry in order to make the proper steps towards, in order to facilitate the science to uptake the data and collaborate in order to, close all the gaps and all the activities that we discussed today. Francisco, yeah.
Yeah, I can, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this session and this round table. It's very interesting. I just brought this picture that I wanted to show you because we have been always, or sometimes when we are talking with policymakers, they are confused about even the data. Like, what data do I need? Do I need remote sensing? Because remote sensing people are trying to sell them remote sensing data. Do we need more cruises? Because people that do cruises try to sell them cruises. Then I'm a numerical modeler, so I'm trying to sell them models. And then, so everyone is trying to sell them, and the policymakers, they don't know all these different technologies that we know that there are some positive things in some of them, there are some limitations, and but also the question that they are making to us are similar, like Giovanni was saying, like, okay, we need indicators, that it was also discussed this morning. And for indicators, we need long-term data. We don't need just the forecast for the next 2 or 3 days or something like this. So they want this kind of broad overview so they can take measures and take decisions on top of them. So the idea is that we need to, first, to talk more with them, So then we understand their needs, but also we need also to talk through each other. So then we understand also the limitations of each technology and how we can complement some results from numerical models with observation from remote, from operational system in the seabed, or with new technologies, novel technologies, and even citizen science that we were discussing here today a lot, that they will bring probably a richer data in the coastal area. So especially if we want to measure what is the difference of the current situation with previous situations, and I think it's a very hot topic now, and hot in the sense of warm. Now, I don't know if you have been following the news, they were talking that this summer has been the record of temperature in the Atlantic area, maybe everywhere, but in the Atlantic area. And we can see the difference with measurements in the past. So if we don't have this past data and long-term data, we cannot see the difference. And that for policymakers also is very, very important. So I think it's very, very important that we try to look at on a very comprehensive point of view of the data and how we can provide some solutions to it.
Thank you very much. And providing a long-term solution involving other people means also involving the citizens. So also to let them to understand what is needed, how they can contribute. Luca, you're representing this category.
Thank you. Yes, my personal work and life mission is to apply conservation, ocean literacy, and environmental awareness to the outdoor sports industry. So if the keyword of this panel is engagement, I think citizen science is one of the most powerful engagement tools we have to have, I like to call it a win-win-win model, because everyone wins. People, citizens win because they are involved in ocean conservation and literacy activities, and they actually do understand the importance of our ecosystems, and they also actually put hands on the problems, and that's a better way than just learning it from the media, from the press, and just in a theoretical way. On the other side, science wins somehow, because there's more and more data that can be collected from the whole outdoor sports industry. Andrew, for example, some minutes ago, was talking about the whole amount of very precious and important data that was collected by the ocean race. So this is quite amazing. I mean, looking at the pictures, it was quite impressive, and it is also a win for the industry, not only as Giovanni was saying before, but also for the tourism industry. Because, for example, this can also be a new tourism frontier, and this is something I am personally experimenting, and it's a way to propose a new model of doing actually of bringing people outdoors, and it's a new format that allows a whole bunch of diving centers, sailing centers, kayaking centers, snorkeling, so on, to have a more complete and also not only like summer offer. So this is something that's really growing and exploding. There's one example that I would like to bring, and it's about another very important side effect, an outcome that comes from all this, which is behavioral change. So we go out in the ocean and we do a whole bunch of stuff with citizen science. One example is, okay, we measure simply the data, the temperature of the ocean at different depths, and this is an activity that has a huge impact for people in understanding what's happening and climate. And it's a beautiful beautiful. I mean, maybe it's not the right word, but it's a very nice assist for us, marine biologists or people that do this job with citizens to talk about the fact, and gates, emotions and the gates of understanding are open, and it's a very propitious way to start enabling people to actually see the problem, not only understanding it from something that comes from outside, but going inside the problem. So going inside the problem, I think, is the real revolution in this. So thank you.
Thank you, Luca. And putting together the people, so informing the people, we discussed many times today, but having a platform in which we can bring together industry, citizen science activities, policymakers. The Observatory of Marine Technology, Osservatorio Nazionale Tecnologie Marine, is already doing this kind of activity. Andrea, can you tell more about this?
Yes, I will. Thanks. Okay. I will begin. Okay. Before talking about the observatory, I'd like to thank all the speaker of this fantastic sequence of presentation this morning, because without this kind of research, without this kind of data, it's impossible to do anything, okay, in raising the level of awareness of people, of the citizens, and the institutions. This is what we do. We fight every day in translating this kind of interesting data about the level of health of our planet to decision makers that should do something in order to have a better future for our future organizations, future generations. We have three main goals in our activity. We are more than 200 people acting in this no-profit organization, in sharing everything we have in terms of data to citizens and to people in order to raise the level of, say, cultural awareness about the environment. And then we select as much as we can innovation from startup, from structured corporates, in order to find solutions to existing problems. And then the most difficult part is to try to translate everything to the decision makers in private or public institutions. Because what we have in front of us is a future where we will have a digital twin of our planet, and this is great, and it is will be a very great help. But this digital twin, for most of the CEOs of companies, is a sort of tool to have a digital lipstick for their organization. So they use data in order to show that they are doing something, okay, in order to have better marketing activity for their companies. So we try to translate them, the real content of data, in order to have them acting and in order to connect information that are coming from research to the financial data. So we have quite a structured organization. I'm part of the board, and we have a lot of people helping us in doing this translation between the research, the innovation world, and the institutional or the decision makers world. We selected all the regions of Italy, almost all of them. We are expanding our activity, and we are trying to work with the companies that are leading this new way of considering the investment in innovation to save this planet. I'll just give you a very short example. We try to avoid to talk about problems with our stakeholders or with the people that we meet at the institutional level, because we think that is quite useless. So it's the risk is to add noise to a certain level of noise already there. In 2018, there has been this region, especially in the east part of this region, there has been the first earthquake caused by a coastal storm. Okay? It's been the first time in the history. And when we were talking about it to the local institution, they say, okay, we know that, so it's important. But when we started to look at the damage that a lot of dozen of yachts that were in Portofino, that were in Camoglie, that caused say something that was really easy to measure, this kind of message was really better than the generic one. So we try to always talk about not the problem, but about the consequences of the problem. And we have quite a large amount of organizations that are asking us to do it even more. And we have a lot of consensus from different, institutions that are opening us their door in order to work together.
And our message, ends up to the policymakers. So I would like to welcome on the on the stage, Marco Campomenosi, that is, a member of the European Parliament. So who better than him can draw a line about a conclusion of this day? Marco, thank you very much for listening to our session, and you're very welcome on the stage.
Thank you very much. And sorry, my dress is quite adapted to the sailing sector, because yesterday I hosted a conference with the European Commission, the city of Genoa, also a representative of stakeholders were there, because, for example, I'm quite engaged on the mission of EU Restore Oceans and Waters, which is something important and which was not so well known even by us, EU legislators, because what is difficult to explain to stakeholders and universities, researchers, is that sometimes there are too many political stakeholders and legislators. The levels are many, and it's not easy to coordinate everything. Today, I've listened to many of the speakers, and I've learned things which I did not know precisely. Apart that, I'm a member of a transport committee. So I'm more engaged as one of the rapporteurs, so for example, on the new regulation on fuel EU for maritime sector, which is very important, and for the aviation as well, and all the other important topics as ETS and other issues. What I told yesterday during another important conference with Enel, an Italian stakeholder, about a collaboration with European Space Agency regarding a project on monitoring the presence of plastic in the oceans, in the Mediterranean Sea especially. It's that our efforts would need to be brought as best practices and examples to the part of the world which does not feel so engaged as we are. And especially in this moment during which we are asking big efforts to the enterprises, even the ship owners, their ships are passing in front of us, have understood that they have to pay for these efforts. But in some cases, the rest of the world is not doing this. And regarding the exchange of data, regarding the presence of many subjects in the worldwide situation, I think we have also to underline the fact that, sadly, the world has many geopolitical tensions, and I don't want to mention also only the aggression of Ukraine, which is something in a way also very regional, but even regarding the exchange of informations in certain sensitive areas in the world, I think that there could be problems. Not regarding the sea, but if you remember only a few weeks ago, months ago, these balloons from China to the United States. what was that? Was it something political, or was it something to study emissions in the air? Maybe it was both, I don't know. But this is something for which the political sector and the legislator have to work a bit more. Of course, engaging the member states of the European Union, European Commission, European Parliament, and the Council where the member states are. Regarding, of course, the engagement and the level of awareness, I think we have done a lot. Honestly, I don't have other counterparts. I don't have other members of the European Parliament today with me, but I'm from a conservative side. But I've learned, and for me, the work I've done these 4 years in the European Parliament has helped me in order to increase my personal awareness, because it has been a path for which not all of us were ready. So I'm honest also to declare this. And it's also thanks to universities, researchers that maybe we involved not enough, but we organized at the European Parliament many moments of exchange where we ask them, considering your data collection, what could you say us regarding this and that? In other aspects, we are more close to how and when we'll find a definitive solution on which kind of technology the industry will have to follow for the transport sector, for example. This is something which is involving the maritime, but not only the maritime. So regarding the data, of course, there are rules, which are also some complex, and in some cases we have also not an easy debate also with counterparts which are anywhere aware as us. So, I mean, a transatlantic dialogue should be useful also on this topic. I've listened also EMODnet, which has an important role, but the way we consider data and how we protect them is a way which is not followed by all the counterparts we have. Of course, we don't have to have fear regarding the fact that this data could be useful also for the industry. And so the industry has these needs, and maybe they could help in order to finance the collecting of these data. And of course, to increase the integration. Because regarding the stakeholders, in my experience, also with the EU mission Restore Oceans and Waters, we're speaking about involving the fishing sector also to collect data, also what to do about the plastic they collect, because during their fishing activities they collect a lot of plastic. What to do with the Guardia Costiera in Italy and the Navy, which are doing another important job. But of course, if I mention Navy, I come back to the geopolitical issues, in which in some cases is delicate, and the Mediterranean, of course, is an important thing for this. So, really, as a legislator, I'm aware of the fact that we have to better know the efforts that the researchers and the private sector, ITT is private enterprises, are doing in this, and I will try to make this effort and also to spread this information to my colleagues. Of course, we are engaged on this, and I think that after this legislative framework on the transition will be concluded, everyone, stakeholders, enterprises, research, universities, local authorities will have all the instruments in order to make a program, to work on which are the technologies to be used and what to do regarding the data, how to make efforts in order to monitor. Because if we work on these legislative instruments, is also that we want to know monitoring if these solutions are effective or not. And last but not least, instruments and as the emission trade system will collect a lot of money, and we have asked to the European Commission to use this money in order to do more research for the stakeholders, in order to go further and faster to the transition, and also to the research sector, because without these data we cannot have a judgment regarding what we are doing. So thank you very much for the invitation, thank you very much for every one of you, and well, enjoy Genoa.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you very much. Because, I mean, somehow, I mean, the lesson learned, I would say, the message, the take-home message is, okay, we need to keep having an open dialogue among all the parties. So initiatives like this one are important because we know each other, we learn from each other, and so we can keep having this open dialogue and better focus also the target that we are doing from the industrial point of view, from the research point of view, from the citizen science point of view, and from the political point of view. So everyone should be on the same party in order to improve the things that we are doing. So thank you very much again. And I would like to thank you all the speakers for today, this morning. It was quite amazing and interesting for me. Learned quite a lot of things, although I knew most of you, but I keep learning. And with this, I also would like to invite you to the buffet in the end of the room. So thank you again. A big applause to each and everyone.